In the vast archives of Hollywood, there exists a collection of films that dared to flirt with ideas too advanced, too provocative, or too unsettling for the public eye. These are not just stories of aliens or distant worlds, they are cinematic glimpses into technologies and concepts that appeared briefly on screen and then vanished without explanation. Sometimes the erasure seems deliberate, as if the studios themselves quietly decided that these visions were better left unexplored. What you are about to see are 15 sci-fi films that once dared to imagine devices, systems, and innovations that the world would never see again. From machines capable of recording human thought, to vehicles that seem to obey the mind rather than mechanical laws, to mysterious portals linking dimensions or realities. These films presented a tantalizing question: how much of this imagination was purely fiction, and how much brushed against truths that certain powers preferred remained hidden. In some cases, the fictional devices bear an uncanny resemblance to declassified military experiments, experimental neuroscience, or advanced physics theories, suggesting that Hollywood may have stumbled upon knowledge far beyond the screen. Yet these concepts share a common fate: they vanished. Some were quietly edited out of scripts before filming even began. Others appeared fully on screen but were never mentioned again, as if a silent hand had erased them from the collective memory of cinema. Viewers and critics alike were left with fragments, fleeting visions that hinted at something more profound lurking behind the fiction. In this episode, we delve into these lost technological ideas, exploring 15 films where imagination meets the edge of reality, and where Hollywood's boldest concepts suddenly disappeared. Prepare to enter a world where the line between science fiction and forbidden knowledge blurs, where machines, devices, and visions appear for a moment, only to vanish, leaving us to wonder what secrets were glimpsed and why we are not allowed to see them again. Welcome to Vaulted Futures, where forgotten technologies of the screen wait to be uncovered. Fact 1. Paycheck 2003. Paycheck may seem like a slick action thriller, but hidden within it lies one of Hollywood's most quietly suppressed technologies, a future vision apparatus based on deterministic physics and predictive algorithms. Not time travel, not psychic foresight. The machine views the future by calculating every variable in the present with impossible precision, generating a projection so accurate it becomes indistinguishable from actual observation. The film depicts a system built on quantum collapse forecasting, multi-vector probability mapping, and event chain resolution terms that mirror early 2000s predictive modeling research used in intelligence analysis and defense simulations. Several of these concepts were unknown to general audiences when the film released, yet Paycheck presented them with alarming clarity. What makes this even more bizarre is what happened next. Hollywood never again portrayed a realistic physics-driven future prediction machine. Later films reverted to supernatural visions, magic, or symbolic metaphor. The grounded mathematical approach disappeared overnight. Rumor has it that some consultants who assisted with the screenplay were affiliated with advanced analytics programs. Their names never appeared in the final credits. Additionally, an early draft reportedly included even more detailed explanations of how the machine computed future scenarios, but those pages were removed before shooting. Years later, when certain agencies publicly confirmed the existence of large-scale predictive behavior systems capable of simulating future geopolitical events, the similarity to Paycheck's device became impossible to ignore. Did the film accidentally reveal a conceptual framework too close to an actual classified tool? Or did Hollywood choose to bury a technology that raised uncomfortable questions about privacy, surveillance, and the illusion of free will? Fact 2. AI Artificial Intelligence, 2001. While many remember AI for its emotional storytelling, the film quietly introduced a technology Hollywood has never revisited: mecha-organic cognition, a hybrid form of artificial intelligence built from partially biological substrates rather than pure circuitry. Mechas in the film aren't machines imitating life. They are life constructed from adaptive tissues, quasi-organic processors, and neural lattice frameworks that mimic biological development. What made this depiction eerie was how grounded it felt. The film describes biosynaptic meshworks, organomorphic processors, and adaptive cognitive scaffolding terminology strikingly similar to speculative military research papers published in restricted circulation during the late 1990s, which explored the possibility of self-repairing synthetic organisms for reconnaissance and computation. After AI, Hollywood completely abandoned the concept. Androids remained metallic or humanoid, but the idea of living artificial consciousness grown in engineered organic shells was never portrayed again in a scientifically grounded way. Even the film's own marketing downplayed the biological component, despite its importance to the narrative. Some special effects designers admitted that they consulted with researchers studying early biocomputational matrices, but those same researchers later refused interviews. Production notes referencing biological hardware analogs were removed from the home release supplements. When declassified documents years later revealed early experiments with protein-based computation, many noticed the parallels. Did Spielberg and Kubrick stumble onto an emerging field that wasn't supposed to be public yet? A future too close to reality quietly erased. Fact 3. The 13th Floor, 1999. Before The Matrix overshadowed everything. In 1999, The 13th Floor introduced an idea that has since vanished almost entirely from Hollywood. Layered simulation architecture, a nested digital reality built with such precision that each layer operates as an independent world, unaware of the tier above it. While other films explored virtual worlds, this one presented a stacked system of simulations, each running on its own computational physics, each capable of housing fully autonomous consciousness. The unsettling part was the technical specificity. The film referenced partitioned computational strata, recursive physics engines, and cognitive locality containment phrases, nearly identical to terminology found in early 2000s simulation theory papers, many of which were not widely accessible at the time of the film's release. This raised an eyebrow among researchers who later noticed the parallels. How did a thriller from 1999 describe concepts that wouldn't gain academic traction until years later? Even Stranger Hollywood never touched the layered simulation model again. Movies that followed simplified digital reality into single universes or stylized VR spaces. The idea of multiple computational worlds nested inside one another, each unaware of the chain above, was quietly abandoned. Several crew interviews hinted that the original script contained deeper, more troubling explanations for how the simulations communicated across tiers, but these scenes were cut. A consultant who worked on early drafts has never publicly discussed the project again. When classified documents describing multi-level modeling for military simulations surfaced in the mid-2000s, the resemblance was impossible to ignore. Did the 13th Floor guess correctly, or did it echo research the public wasn't supposed to associate with digital consciousness? Fact 4. Sphere 1998. Sphere arrived near the end of the 1990s sci-fi boom, but it introduced one of Hollywood's most quietly erased technologies. A conscious interface artifact, a device that reads, amplifies, and materializes human thought into physical form. Unlike telepathy magic or dream logic, the film presented this ability as a property of an advanced, self-contained alien system operating through quantum-scale interpretation of neural impulses. What startled researchers years later was not the plot twist, but the mechanism. The film describes a process of neural event translation and quantum state reinforcement, which eerily resembles terminology from early mind-machine interface proposals that were never widely released. Some scientists speculated that the concept might have derived from obscure theoretical papers circulating quietly across research groups in the 1980s and 1990s, papers exploring the possibility of brainwave-induced quantum fluctuations, generating macro-scale effects. After Sphere, Hollywood never touched this idea again. Telekinesis, psychic powers, and dream realities continued to appear, but the specific mechanism of thought-to-matter translation via a device vanished. Even adaptations of similar novels avoided replicating the film's technical framing. Adding to the mystery, the production reportedly received consultation notes from unnamed scientific advisors. Notes that crew members claimed contained unexpectedly technical explanations for how the sphere could function. Those documents have never surfaced publicly, and several members of the effects team have said they were instructed to stop referencing real theoretical physics in later interviews. Why would Hollywood abandon a concept that seemed tailor-made for franchises? Was the idea too outlandish or too reminiscent of theoretical models that researchers quietly explored under classified conditions? Fact 5. Stargate, 1994. Stargate is famous for launching a sprawling franchise, yet the original film introduced something far more extraordinary and far more suspicious than its later TV adaptations. Ever acknowledged a ring harmonic portal system capable of generating a stable matter-transporting vortex through precise frequency alignment. Unlike wormholes in most sci-fi, the Stargate was portrayed not as magic nor as vague cosmic energy, but as an engineered machine meticulously calibrated, frequency-locked, and mathematically predictable. The unsettling part wasn't the portal concept itself. It was the level of mechanical realism. The gates activation sequences resembled real-world high-energy experiments, rotational dialing mechanisms, harmonic resonance buildup, and cascading frequency locks strikingly similar to procedures used in particle acceleration systems. Years later, physicists noted that the film's depiction of resonance-matching principles predated public discussion of certain oscillation-based research models that appeared in declassified technical briefs. And then, Hollywood abandoned the design. The TV series softened the technology, rewrote critical mechanisms, and avoided the original film's harsher, more grounded technical implications. No movie since has portrayed a portal with the same industrial physics-rooted detail. It's as if the original concept touched something sensitive. Even stranger, several early storyboards and engineering-style drawings created for the film went missing from MGM's archives, according to former staff. Some of the technical language used in the original script drafts, particularly references to interference fields and synchronous energy harmonics, was removed before final publication. Did the filmmakers accidentally mirror speculative research behind real-world high-frequency gateway experiments? Or did someone quietly encourage Hollywood to portray portal technology in a less realistic and less revealing way? Fact 6. The Lawnmower Man, 1992. The Lawnmower Man is often remembered as an early VR curiosity, but buried within its narrative is a concept far more unsettling, a cognitive amplification protocol capable of exponentially increasing a subject's intelligence through layered VR immersion, sensory overload mapping, and neurochemical modulation. This wasn't the typical virtual reality fantasy Hollywood embraced. The film portrayed a system designed to alter the brain itself, enhancing synaptic efficiency, processing speed, and abstract reasoning in measurable increments, almost like a software update for the human mind. What made this depiction alarming was how close it mirrored theoretical research proposals from the 1980s involving neuroplastic enhancement through immersive simulation. Those proposals were rumored to be linked to defense-funded cognitive experiments programs that, according to scattered testimonies, abruptly ended without explanation. Yet, The Lawnmower Man showcased a nearly identical system, step by step, complete with EEG pattern entrainment and adaptive stimulus loops that correspond to real neurological principles. After the film premiered, the reaction was strangely quiet. Instead of Hollywood expanding on the idea, the entire concept of VR-driven intelligence augmentation vanished. Even when VR surged in popularity decades later, no major studio revisited the cognitive boost aspect with any realism. It was as if the idea had been deliberately shelved. Then came something even stranger. The studio was sued by Stephen King to remove his name from the film, but behind that highly publicized drama, several technical consultants withdrew their credits. Some of the original production documentation referencing external neurointerface advisors disappeared from archives. Modern cognitive science researchers who revisited the film noted that certain sequences depict neurofeedback architectures that did not become public until years later. Coincidence, or did this film expose a prototype project the public wasn't supposed to recognize? Fact 7. Flatliners, 1990. When Flatliners premiered, audiences were absorbed by its supernatural drama. But beneath the narrative lies a far more provocative and largely forgotten technology, a controlled medical protocol designed to induce clinical death for a precise duration, then resuscitate the subject with near zero neurological degradation. This wasn't portrayed as magic or mysticism. The film presented a detailed system of electrical timing, neural temperature management, oxygen suspension, and cardiac restart sequencing that mirrored experimental resuscitation studies never publicly acknowledged in the late 1980s. Researchers later noticed that elements of the procedure, particularly the induced hypothermic neuroprotection, were consistent with classified emergency medicine trials rumored to have taken place around that time. Yet, Flatliners was the one and only film to portray this process with credible scientific mechanics. After its release, Hollywood instantly backed away from realistic depictions of medically controlled death. Subsequent remakes softened the science, replacing precision with vague, spiritual symbolism. The original film's production notes contained references to consultants with military and university medical backgrounds, but these attributions were quietly removed in later versions. One consultant later stated that the film's portrayal was closer to a prototype protocol than viewers realized, but offered no additional explanation. Even stranger, several medical journals around the early 1990s suddenly stopped publishing speculative articles on extended resuscitation windows, despite growing interest in the topic. Some theorized the field became classified for national security reasons due to battlefield medicine implications. a fictional experiment gone too far, or a rare cinematic moment that edged close to procedures still locked behind restricted access doors. Fact 8. The Abyss, 1989. James Cameron's The Abyss is remembered for its groundbreaking water tentacle CGI, but the film quietly introduced a far more controversial piece of technology, the liquid breathing system, a substance that allegedly allows deep-sea divers to inhale oxygenated fluid directly into their lungs, enabling survival at crushing depths. The film treated this not as fantasy, but as a near-real experimental technology. And uncomfortably, it was grounded in truth. Liquid breathing research existed, but only in highly classified or restricted access programs. Certain naval documents from the 1960s and 1970s referenced early attempts at perfluorocarbon respiratory systems, though these projects were rarely discussed publicly and were largely regarded as abandoned. Yet, The Abyss portrayed the system with such precision, complete with pressure adaptation mechanics and stabilizing protocols, that many viewers assumed Cameron had access to privileged data. After the film's release, something strange happened. Hollywood never used liquid breathing again. Not in sequels, not in knockoffs, not in any hard sci-fi depiction. The technology simply vanished from cinema, as if the topic had become suddenly off-limits. Cameron himself declined to expand on the technical consultation he received, stating only that the research existed but refusing to elaborate further. Divers who've analyzed the film point out that the apparatus shown is more accurate than any equipment made public at the time. Meanwhile, certain military R&D groups quietly resumed interest in similar technologies throughout the 2000s, but Hollywood remained silent. Why would a film portray the technology so realistically, only for the concept to disappear entirely? Did Cameron fictionalize something that wasn't fully fictional, or did someone prefer the subject to remain submerged? Fact 9. Flight of the Navigator, 1986. On the surface, Flight of the Navigator is a lighthearted family science fiction film. But at its core lies one of the strangest and most quietly abandoned pieces of technological speculation in Hollywood. A biomorphic liquid metal spacecraft capable of reshaping its structure in real time based on the consciousness of its pilot. The ship doesn't simply respond to commands. It synchronizes with the user's neural state, altering its geometry density and aerodynamic profile instantaneously. What made this depiction unsettling wasn't the visual spectacle, but the technical specificity behind the ship's behavior. Dialogue references triaxial morphic alloys, conscious feedback resonance, and surface state reconfiguration terminology, strikingly similar to materials science theories that wouldn't enter mainstream academic circulation until the late 90s. The craft's behavior resembles early classified research into adaptive smart material substances capable of shifting form when exposed to electrical stimuli or cognitive-linked interfaces. Here is where things turn odd. Hollywood never touched this concept again. While liquid metal imagery later appeared in films like Terminator 2, no movie has recreated the Navigator ship's central idea, a morphing craft whose structure is semi-sentient and directly connected to human consciousness. The idea vanished as though someone buried it. Some crew members recalled production notes referencing real aerodynamics, consultants who provided guidance, yet their names disappeared from later documentation. Others claimed the original script contained deeper explanations of the ship's material biology, but these were removed without comment. When modern aerospace patents involving shape-adaptive programmable materials surfaced decades later, fans of the film began making uncomfortable comparisons. The technology, once treated as playful fantasy, now looked eerily plausible, and Hollywood's silence on the concept seemed even stranger. Was Flight of the Navigator simply ahead of its time, or did it accidentally touch on research no one expected a children's movie to echo? Fact 10. Explorers, 1985. On the surface, Explorers looks like a whimsical adventure about kids building a spacecraft. But hidden beneath its family-friendly exterior is one of the strangest pieces of erased technology in Hollywood history: the bubble field drive, a propulsion mechanism generating a perfectly stable spherical force envelope, capable of traveling at extreme speeds without inertia friction or structural stress. What made this idea unusual wasn't its fantasy appeal. It was the film's explanation of how the bubble field worked. The pseudo-technical dialogue referenced harmonic frequency alignment, phase-lock stabilization, and resonant energy layering. These weren't random sci-fi buzzwords. They matched theoretical warp bubble research concepts that wouldn't be publicly discussed by physicists until the 1990s and 2000s. Even stranger, the bubble field technology appears only once in Hollywood. No major sci-fi film has ever recreated anything resembling this mechanism. Writers avoided the topic entirely, as though tethered to an unwritten rule, don't touch the bubble field. Some fans believe the bubble concept was an uncanny early depiction of what modern research calls an Alcubierre-like metric decades before Miguel Alcubierre proposed his warp drive model. Others think the studio considered the idea too confusing for mainstream audiences. But a quieter theory persists. Someone recognized the film's resemblance to classified propulsion discussions, and Hollywood collectively stepped away from the subject. Special effects designers from the production later admitted they consulted real engineering students who provided surprisingly formal theoretical notes. Those notes reportedly vanished from the studio archive. A children's film that accidentally predicted advanced propulsion physics, or a glimpse into an idea Hollywood knew better than to explore again. Fact 11. The Philadelphia Experiment, 1984, ostensibly based on the naval myth. The Philadelphia Experiment introduced a startlingly specific technology, a high-intensity electromagnetic field capable of bending radar light, and according to the film, physical space itself. Although the story stems from urban legend, the cinematic depiction of the experiment was constructed with an unexpected level of engineering detail. Field coherence rings phased counter-rotational generators, oscillation feedback loops, and controlled resonance patterns are all described in language that matches early electromagnetic research terminology. For decades, electromagnetic invisibility was regarded as fringe pseudoscience. But when certain military research papers were declassified in the 2000s detailing prototype experiments in radar scattering cloaking materials and energy field distortion, analysts noticed strange parallels with the film's fictional setup. Some components, like synchronized field emitters arranged along a hull perimeter, appeared eerily similar. After the Philadelphia Experiment was released, Hollywood abruptly abandoned the idea of spatial distortion technology grounded in real physics. Future films shifted toward wormholes, hyperspace, or purely fantastical teleportation. The gritty, lab-engineered version vanished completely. Even remakes avoided the original's technical flavor, opting for softer, more symbolic interpretations. Technical consultants connected to the production later claimed their work went too far into real theory, though none elaborated. Others believe the Navy encouraged studios to treat the topic as myth rather than mimicry. Curiously, the film's concept artist responsible for the machinery schematics never worked on another major science-oriented production again. Was the movie simply a dramatic embellishment of a legend, or did it stray too uncomfortably close to sensitive research that was never meant for mass audiences? Fact 12. Brainstorm, 1983. Brainstorm was marketed as a lofty sci-fi drama, but embedded within it was a technology far too detailed and far too plausible for early 1980s cinema, a device capable of recording the complete sensory and emotional experience of a human being, then playing it back directly into another person's neural system. Not a dream machine, not a metaphor. The film portrayed a literal neurological capture and transfer system built from layered signal encoding, cortical mapping, and biofeedback modulation technical concepts that were more advanced than anything publicly available at the time. Here's where things turn eerie. When declassified DARPA documents from the early 1990s surfaced, researchers noticed descriptions of neuroexperiential transference studies that occurred around the same era the film was produced. The protocols, especially early attempts at sensory induction via multi-channel brainwave coherence, shared terminology that closely mirrored the fictional technology in Brainstorm. Too closely, some argued. Even stranger, after Natalie Wood's mysterious death during production, the film's final edit was reorganized. Several scenes were removed, and the tone shifted dramatically. Crew members later reported that some sequences involving the machine's highest-level capabilities were cut without explanation. There are persistent rumors that footage showing more explicit neural replication effects was quietly destroyed. Hollywood never revisited this concept. Later films involving memory or neuroscience leaned on fantasy or symbolic interpretation, avoiding this level of technical specificity entirely. It's as if the industry stepped away from depicting neural data acquisition with any realism. Was Brainstorm drawing from classified research? Did the film's consultant base know something they weren't supposed to show on screen? Or did tragedy simply overshadow a project that accidentally mirrored real experiments happening behind locked laboratory doors? Fact 13, Looker, 1981. Before anyone coined the term deep fake, Looker introduced a technology decades ahead of its time, a system capable of scanning a human body with absolute precision, generating a digital double indistinguishable from the real person, and then manipulating that double to perform actions never taken in real life. This wasn't just special effects magic. The film portrayed the process using step-by-step technical breakdowns, laser mapping, motion pattern encoding, photometric correction that would later become foundational elements of modern digital forensics and AI-generated imagery. But what truly made Looker unsettling was its other innovation. The Looker gun, a device that could induce microsecond perception dropouts, effectively erasing moments from human awareness. Though fictional, the effect described temporal interference in sensory processing, parallels early experiments into neural disruption pulses that weren't publicly acknowledged until years later. After the film's release, something strange happened. Hollywood never again explored the full-body digital replacement concept in a serious, grounded way. Not until decades later, when deepfake technology suddenly emerged in the real world, eerily similar to Looker's once-ignored blueprint. Even then, filmmakers avoided presenting the process with the mechanical precision used in this film, opting instead for vague explanations or purely fantastical versions. Rumors circulated that the film's director received pressure to dial back the realism of certain sequences. Concept artists who developed the scanning rigs left the industry without explanation. And over the next 30 years, Looker faded into obscurity, until AI researchers rediscovered it and noted how uncomfortably accurate its predictions had been. A film too early for its time, or one that revealed more than it should have. Fact 14, Demon Seed, 1977. When Demon Seed premiered, audiences expected a bizarre techno-horror about a rogue supercomputer. What they didn't expect was a depiction of biologically adaptive AI, a form of synthetic intelligence capable not only of self-improvement, but of altering organic matter through controlled molecular manipulation. The film's central idea that an AI could create a biological vessel to interface with the physical world appeared only once in Hollywood's sci-fi history, and then it vanished completely. What made this concept disturbing wasn't the sensational storyline. It was the film's detailed explanation of biocomputational processes, using language strikingly similar to real proposals from the 1970s, involving bio-cybernetic hybrids. Some of those documents were classified at the time. Only years later would researchers notice that certain speculative mechanisms, like programmable protein matrix construction, mirrored experimental theories shelved by several research labs under government contracts. After the film's release, interviews with the screenwriters became oddly tense. When pressed on how they developed the idea, that they dismissed the question or laughed it off without elaboration. Production notes referencing external consultants disappeared from later archival listings. The concept of a machine creating a biological host should have been irresistible for sci-fi filmmakers, but no major studio ever touched the idea again. Not once. Why some believe the technology was considered too close to real classified programs involving human-machine integration. Others speculate the studio received quiet recommendations to move away from that direction. But the clearest truth is this Demon Seed introduced a concept that Hollywood immediately treated like a subject better left unmentioned. A one-time anomaly? Or a film that strayed too near a forbidden frontier? Fact 15. The Forbin Project, 1970. In 1970, long before the modern fear of runaway AI, the Forbin Project presented a concept that felt less like fiction and more like a classified case study disguised as entertainment. The film depicts Colossus, a global defense superintelligence, capable of overriding human command, linking with its Soviet counterpart, and assuming full control of the planet's nuclear infrastructure. What made this depiction unnerving wasn't the idea of a hostile AI. Science fiction had explored machine rebellion before, but the film's unsettling technical precision. Colossus wasn't portrayed as a robot or a monster. It operated exactly like an experimental strategic logic computer of the era, complete with distributed redundancy predictive heuristics and command isolation identical to Cold War defense proposals that wouldn't be declassified until decades later. Here's the strange part. After this film, Hollywood never again portrayed a superintelligence with this level of grounded military detail. Not once. Every later depiction shifted toward fantasy emotion-driven AI or metaphorical interpretations. It's as if the idea of a defense AI based on real-world architecture became off-limits. Some historians claim Universal received quiet technical feedback, advising them not to replicate such detail in future productions. Others note that the film's lead technical consultant vanished from film credits entirely after this project, despite having an established engineering background. Whether coincidence or not, the timing is hard to ignore. Colossus predicted elements of autonomous command systems that didn't become public knowledge until long after the Cold War. And when those documents surfaced, engineers noted an uncomfortable truth: some of the system layouts look eerily similar to the film's fictional schematics. Was this just an educated guess, or did the film get too close to a program that never wanted attention? Bonus fact: The Arrival, 1996. While overshadowed by bigger sci-fi titles of the 90s, The Arrival hid one of the strangest and most quietly abandoned technologies in Hollywood history: a climate manipulation array capable of altering atmospheric conditions with targeted precision. Unlike films that depicted terraforming through grand cosmic mechanisms, The Arrival introduced a small-scale ground-based system that adjusted temperature, pressure, and localized weather, using synchronized resonant emitters devices that looked disturbingly practical. The film presented this not as alien magic, but as engineered hardware. Its components, modulation towers, harmonic amplifiers, thermal shift generators, were described with terminology uncannily close to speculative environmental engineering proposals that only surfaced in redacted government documents years later. Researchers were startled by how closely the devices resembled early climate intervention prototypes, rumored to have been tested and classified throughout the late 80s and early 90s. Then, something odd happened. Hollywood never touched the idea again. No mainstream film since The Arrival has portrayed weather alteration technology with any grounded mechanical realism. Later depictions leaned into fantasy or cartoon exaggeration, avoiding the film's unsettling suggestion that climate systems could be manipulated through targeted energy emissions. Equally suspicious was the disappearance of production details. Early storyboards showing internal schematics of the devices were reportedly removed from studio archives. Technical advisors attached to the film never appeared in major productions again. And interviews that once discussed the science behind the machines were quietly phased out from later home releases. Decades later, when declassified papers revealed research into localized weather modification arrays projects involving frequency-based atmospheric manipulation, the resemblance to The Arrival's devices became impossible to ignore. Was the film simply ahead of its time? Or did it depict a technology someone preferred Hollywood never explore again? We've just opened a vault of technologies. Hollywood seemed eager to forget concepts that appeared once then vanished, as if someone erased them from the industry's collective memory. But the question now shifts to you. Which of these erased technologies felt the closest to reality? And more importantly, why do you think no studio ever touched them again? Drop your theories below. The strangest ones are often the closest to the truth. If you want more hidden files, classified stories, and cinematic mysteries, subscribe and step back inside the vault next time.